Family dinners are supposed to be warm, filled with laughter and belonging. But that night, as your mother's voice echoed with pride about your brother's new 4-bedroom mansion, you felt the familiar sting of invisibility. The marble counters, the chandeliers, the pool, every detail painted him as the shining star, while your own life was brushed aside with a quiet sigh. You sat still, fork in hand, a storm building behind your silence. Then came the question that changed everything. Wouldn't you love to stay at his place? Close quote. What would you have done? If stories like this resonate with you, a gentle like or subscribe will keep us walking this journey together. You remember those family dinners not for their warmth, but for the way they exposed the cracks in your place at the table. Even as a child, the comparison was constant. When you came home with a blue ribbon from the science fair, your mother barely looked up. "That's nice, Karen," close quote, she said, her eyes already shifting toward your brother. The very next day, when he made a single basket during a game his team lost by 20 points, she clapped like he was a champion. You stood there holding your ribbon, invisible in plain sight. Have you ever felt that way, like your best effort could never compete with someone else's shadow? It wasn't just the contests or the grades. You poured hours into building a model rocket, hands sticky with glue, heart racing with pride. Winning first place should have been a moment of celebration. But when you carried that ribbon into the kitchen, your mother brushed past you to ask Gregory how soccer practice went. He shrugged, said he sat on the bench most of the game, and she hugged him like he'd conquered the world. You placed your ribbon quietly on the counter, realizing praise was not something you could ever expect. How many of you listening have carried home an achievement, only to watch it fall flat in the eyes of those you wanted to impress most? In middle school, the debate team became your stage. Late nights rehearsing arguments, scribbling notes until the ink bled across the pages, your determination paid off when you won regionals. Your picture appeared in the local paper, your coach beaming with pride. But when you looked to the stands that day, the seat you saved for your mother was empty. She had chosen to attend Gregory's history presentation, a project he half finished, earning a grade that barely passed. She baked him a cake that night for his effort, close quote, while your trophy gathered dust in the corner of your room. It was not that you craved endless applause. What you wanted was to feel seen, to know your existence mattered beyond being the sibling in the background. You watched the pattern repeat year after year. A birdhouse you carved in woodshop sat ignored on a shelf, while a skateboard Gregory cracked in half, earned him a new one the next day. Did your mother believe he needed more attention? Did she think you were stronger and therefore required less care? Or was it that she simply didn't see you at all? Those questions gnawed at you in the silence of your room at night, the journal your aunt gave you becoming your only outlet. Your aunt, she was the rare light in those years. She saw the disappointment clouding your eyes, the way your smile never reached your heart. "Keep going, kid," close quote, she whispered one Christmas, pressing a book on architecture into your hands. "You're special." She gave you a journal one summer, urging you to write your dreams. Page after page, you poured yourself into sketches of homes, notes about designs, and ideas of building something real, something no one could dismiss. That journal became your sanctuary, proof that even if your mother couldn't see you, you could see yourself. By high school, you had stopped chasing her approval. Instead, you threw yourself into every project with quiet determination. When she raved about Gregory fixing his bike, you focused on organizing fundraisers that provided books for underprivileged children. When she clapped for his school play, you stayed up late reading about real estate, fascinated by how one investment could turn into an empire. Every comparison stung, but instead of breaking you, it fueled a resolve that one day, they would not be able to ignore what you built. There was a night in 10th grade that sealed this promise. You had organized a fundraiser that drew the attention of your entire school. Standing on stage, microphone trembling in your hands, you thanked the crowd for helping raise enough to stock a local library with new books. You scanned the audience, praying to find your mother's face. She wasn't there. Instead, she was cheering for Gregory at a soccer game where he once again sat mostly on the bench. The applause of strangers filled the auditorium, but your heart sank with the realization that home would never echo that sound. And so you told yourself if they wouldn't clap, then you would build a life that thundered louder than their silence. Looking back, maybe your mother thought she was protecting Gregory, cushioning him from disappointment with exaggerated pride. Maybe she saw something fragile in him that needed constant care. But the effect on you was a steady erosion, a lesson repeated daily that your worth would always rank second. And yet, within that quiet ache, a fire grew. A belief that one day, you would outgrow their vision of you, not by begging for recognition, but by becoming undeniable. That belief carried you forward when you left home for college. A full scholarship felt like vindication, a silent message to the family that doubted you. Professors recognized your talent, handing you leadership roles on projects, praising your sharp mind. By junior year, you were already interning at a real estate firm, learning how to spot undervalued properties, flipping them into something new. Every deal became more than numbers. It was a piece of proof that you could stand tall without your family's applause. And yet, when your mother called, her voice still carried the same tune. "How's your little job?" Close quote, she would ask, brushing past your answer to gush about Gregory's new car or promotion. You smile through the phone, masking the sting, reminding yourself that her words no longer defined you. But late at night, when the silence pressed in, you couldn't help but wonder. Why was it so hard for her to simply say, "I'm proud of you"? It is moments like this that stay etched in memory, not because of the hurt, but because of the strength they forge. For every dismissal, you built a foundation. For every slight, you laid another brick in the empire that would one day surround you. And though they didn't know it, each act of favoritism was shaping the person you were becoming, resilient, relentless, and ready to prove them wrong. And now, as you remember those years, perhaps you too feel the echo of similar moments in your own life. Have you ever wondered what it would be like if the people you longed for most never recognized your efforts? Would you still rise, or would you let their silence define you? If these reflections strike a chord with you, let's keep walking together. A simple tap on like or subscribe is more than a number, it's a way for us to share stories that remind each other we're not alone in this. Leaving home for college felt like crossing an invisible border between who you had been and who you were determined to become. The quiet promise you whispered to yourself during those teenage years that one day you would build something no one could dismiss traveled with you like a hidden compass. At the University of South Dakota, a full scholarship affirmed what your mother never said out loud. You were capable, worthy, and strong. Professors noticed your sharp mind, often assigning you to lead group projects. In classrooms filled with debate and calculation, you began to find a recognition that had always been withheld at home. By junior year, your path sharpened into focus. You secured an internship at a local real estate firm, where mentors introduced you to the art of spotting potential in places others overlooked. An old duplex on a quiet street, a neglected townhouse with peeling paint, they weren't just properties, they were puzzles waiting for someone with patience and vision. For the first time, you felt that spark of ownership, the sense that you could shape the world around you with your choices. Do you remember your first moment of independence, when you realized you no longer needed someone else's approval to feel whole? Graduation didn't send you back to Sioux Falls. You stayed in Vermilion, working long hours at the firm, saving every dollar. Friends spent weekends celebrating, buying new clothes, chasing fleeting joys. You drove an old sedan, clipped coupons, and watched your savings grow. At 23, you signed the papers on your first property, a small duplex. You spent weeks repairing, painting, and preparing it for tenants. When the first rental checks arrived, it felt like more than money. It was validation. It was proof that the path you had chosen was yours alone. From there, each step built upon the last. A condo, a townhouse, a small single-family home in a neighborhood just a few streets away from the kinds of houses your brother loved to show off online. Each acquisition strengthened not only your finances, but your sense of control. Unlike Gregory, who flaunted every purchase, you chose silence. To your mother, you were still living in that tiny apartment, close quote, scraping by in her eyes. But beneath the modest exterior, you were crafting an empire brick by brick. And isn't it interesting how silence can sometimes become a most powerful shield? While they underestimated you, you grew stronger without their interference. While they compared you to Gregory's surface victories, you measured success in steady returns, in financial independence, in the quiet knowledge that you were building something lasting. Yet the favoritism at home never paused. Phone calls with your mother followed the same script. "How's your little job?" Close quote, she would ask, her tone tinged with dismissal. Before you could answer fully, she would pivot. "Did you see Gregory's new SUV? They're planning another trip to Europe." You'd respond with a polite smile in your voice, swallowing the sting. Why correct her? Why invite another round of comparisons? Your success was not meant to be paraded before her. It was meant to anchor you, to heal the parts of yourself that had once felt invisible. Your best friend from college, Tina, became one of the few who knew the truth. Over coffee one night, she stumbled upon your name in public property records. "Karen, you own what?" Close quote, she exclaimed, eyes wide. "3 houses in that neighborhood. You're sitting on a gold mine." You laughed it off, but she pressed you. "Why hide it? You're killing it. Own your success." You stirred your coffee and shrugged. "It's not about them knowing. It's about me knowing." She respected your choice, but her words lingered. Sometimes the hardest part of success isn't the work, it's deciding who deserves to know about it. Meanwhile, your brother and his wife leaned further into their showy lifestyle. Designer clothes, expensive vacations, social media posts curated for applause. Your mother forwarded you those pictures with breathless pride. You scrolled past them with quiet detachment. You already knew the math didn't add up. Their spending outpaced their earnings, their smiles concealing stress lines beneath the surface. A colleague in finance whispered that Gregory had taken out a second mortgage just to sustain the illusion. You said nothing. Some truths reveal themselves without your intervention. Years rolled forward. Your modest apartment remained the same, but your portfolio expanded steadily. By your late 20s, you owned half a dozen properties, including 3 homes in Sioux Falls' most upscale neighborhood houses that quietly outshined your brother's mansion. And yet, you lived simply, wearing ordinary clothes, driving that same old sedan. To the outside world, you were unremarkable. But to yourself, you were unstoppable. Still, no matter how much you built, part of you carried the memory of being dismissed. Every property you acquired felt like a conversation with your past, a whispered reply to every slight. I see myself now. Even if you never did. Do you ever find yourself doing something not just for success, but to answer the silence of those who once ignored you? When your family gathered, the patterns remained. Gregory basked in praise, your mother glowing at his every word. Your father sat quietly, his silence a form of surrender. Your aunt, however, never stopped encouraging you with those subtle nods, those knowing looks that said, I see you. And that was enough to keep you steady. By the time your 30s arrived, you had built a life that balanced power with purpose. It wasn't only about the properties. You began considering how to use your success to create change, to give to others what you had longed for. Recognition, opportunity, belonging. The idea of starting a foundation sparked in your mind, though you kept it quietly tucked away, like every dream you'd ever nurtured. And then, of course, came the dinner, the one where everything changed. But before that evening, there had been years of silence, years where you let them believe you were struggling while you were, in truth, building something greater than they could imagine. What would you smiled faintly, your fork poised but untouched. You'd grown accustomed to being the quiet listener, the one who nodded while your mother's words painted Gregory as the embodiment of success. But that night, something in her tone, sharp, syrupy, and edged with pity, sliced through you. Karen, close quote, she said, tilting her head, don't you get tired of that little apartment? Wouldn't you just love to stay at Gregory's place? Close quote. Laughter rippled softly around the table. You caught your aunt's eyes, steady, firm, silently urging you to hold your ground. Inside, a storm gathered. You remembered every moment of being overlooked. The rocket left on the counter, the debate trophy no one noticed, the fundraiser that meant nothing because Gregory had practice. You set your fork down, the sound sharp in the quiet room. The chatter faltered. Slowly, deliberately, you leaned forward and spoke. Thanks, Mom. But I don't need to stay at Gregory's. I own 3 houses in that neighborhood already. 2 next door, and 1 across the street. Which one would you like to visit? Close quote. The words hung in the air like thunder. The room froze. Gregory's smirk slipped, his wife's bracelet stilled midair. Your mother's wine glass hovered, her face stunned into silence. For the first time, every eye turned toward you, not with dismissal, but with disbelief. And then you continued, your voice calm but edged with years of unspoken truth. You always told me Gregory deserved more. When I won first place for my model rocket, you brushed it aside. When I led the debate team to regionals, you were too busy baking him a cake for a passing grade. When I organized a fundraiser that filled a library with books, you clapped for him sitting on a bench at soccer. You've never seen me, Mom. Not once. Her lips parted, but no words emerged. Gregory sputtered, reaching for the folder you slid across the table. Inside, the property deeds bore your name in bold letters, notarized and undeniable. His voice cracked, high and unsteady. This is fake. You're lying. His wife leaned closer, scanning the papers, her eyes narrowing. You live in that apartment. This can't be real. You let out a quiet, measured laugh. That apartment. It's one of my rentals. I keep it simple because I prefer it that way. My tenants cover my bills. But you might want to check your own finances. Word is, a second mortgage doesn't make for stability. Their faces drained of color, bravado crumbling into silence. Your father's knife paused mid-cut, his eyes finally lifting to meet yours. For years, he had kept peace through silence. That night, however, the dam cracked. She's right, Vivian, close quote, he said softly, but firmly. You've favored Gregory his whole life. Look at what Karen has built. She doesn't need your money, but she deserves your respect. His words landed with weight, like a verdict too long delayed. Your mother's face flushed with indignation. How dare you speak this way in front of your brother? Close quote, she snapped, her tone dripping with scorn. But the fury in her voice no longer pierced you. You sat straighter, eyes steady, your strength no longer hidden. Worked hard. Close quote, you echoed. You pay for his house, his wedding, and now you're handing him Grandpa's trust fund. What did I get? A $50 check and a pat on the head. The silence stretched taut, every breath in the room heavy. Aunt Beatrice's eyes glistened with pride, her lips twitching into a smile she tried to suppress. Gregory shifted uncomfortably, flipping through the documents again, as if the ink might vanish under his stare. His wife looked away, her earlier confidence gone. And you no longer felt the need to raise your voice. Each word came clear and even, polished by years of patience. I'm not here to beg for approval. I've built more than you ever gave me. I own a block around your mansion, Gregory. And Mom, you can keep your trust fund. I don't need it. What I need is recognition that I exist. Your father's voice trembled but held steady. Vivian, you've hurt her more than you realize. You made her invisible while praising Gregory for every little thing. And now look, she has done more without you than he has with you. That's the truth. In that moment, the room no longer felt like a dining table but a courtroom. Your mother's silence was not victory, but defeat. Gregory's pale face was not power, but fear. And your calm was not defiance, but freedom. Have you ever imagined speaking aloud every truth you swallowed for years? What would you say if you finally had the chance? The evening ended not with reconciliation, but with clarity. You pushed your chair back, the scrape echoing in the still air. Enjoy your mansion, close quote, you said, gathering your purse. But remember, I don't live in your shadow anymore. You nodded to your aunt, whose proud gaze steadied you, and walked toward the door. Your mother's voice chased you, sharp, defensive, desperate. But you didn't turn back. For the first time, you no longer needed her to understand. Outside, the night air wrapped around you, cool and liberating. The house behind you still buzzed with stunned whispers, but inside your chest, the weight of decades lifted. You weren't the overlooked daughter anymore. You were the woman who chose her own worth. After that night, the echoes of your words lingered longer than the clink of cutlery or the fading scent of roast. For years, you had been the quiet shadow at family gatherings. But once spoken, the truth could not be unsaid. In the days that followed, the air around your family thickened with tension. Your mother sent you texts, first defensive, then pleading. You embarrassed us. Another read, you owe Gregory an apology. Each message carried the same tone you'd heard your whole life. Dismissive, demanding, unwilling to reflect. You didn't respond. For once, silence was your power, not your prison. Gregory tried his own approach. His words spilled with arrogance disguised as injury. You ruined everything with your stunt. He boasted on social media about their mansion and their perfect life, close quote, weaving captions that doubled as barbs aimed at you. Yet beneath the curated smiles, cracks widened. Rumors surfaced about overdue bills, whispered foreclosure threats, and a second mortgage spiraling into disaster. Within months, the truth caught up. The mansion that once symbolized triumph went on the market, sold at a loss. Gregory and his wife downsized into a small apartment on the edge of town, their grandeur stripped bare. Do you ever wonder how quickly appearances can unravel once the mask slips? Meanwhile, your father, the man who had sat quietly for decades, began to shift. That night at the dinner table had awakened something in him. He started voicing what had long been buried. Neighbors whispered about arguments spilling from the house at odd hours. Your father accusing your mother of favoritism, your mother refusing to concede. After years of silence, he chose honesty, even if it fractured what was left. Their marriage, already fragile, eventually cracked beyond repair. Your father moved into a modest condo downtown, weary but relieved to no longer live in the shadow of denial. Your mother stayed behind in the suburban house, clinging to old routines. She still defended Gregory in conversations, but her words sounded brittle, like glass threatening to shatter. Isolation wrapped around her, though she would never admit it aloud. The very favoritism she wielded to hold her family together had, in the end, broken it apart. For you, however, life stretched in a different direction. You poured yourself into your properties, but more importantly, into purpose. You established a foundation, the Horizon Fund, using profits to provide scholarships for students who reminded you of yourself. Bright, capable, often overlooked. At the first awards ceremony, 10 students stood on stage, clutching letters of opportunity. Their parents wiped tears of gratitude, their eyes shining in ways you had once longed to see from your own mother. Watching those families, you realized you had created something beyond wealth. A ripple of recognition and belonging. Tina, your best friend, wrote about your foundation in a regional magazine. The article praised not just your business acumen, but your generosity. And for once, your story stood on its own, not as a counterpoint to Gregory, not as a shadow in comparison, but as a narrative of resilience and vision. Your aunt's quiet pride never wavered. A short text arrived one evening after the article was published. You did good, kid. No elaborate words, no demands. Just affirmations, simple, sincere, and enough. Gregory's downfall became the talk of town for a while. His wife's social media posts shifted from boasting poolside photos to vague complaints about hard times. Friends who once filled their parties drifted away. Pride, when built only on appearances, rarely survives reality. Did you ever imagine that the very sibling held up as golden would crumble under the weight of the pedestal he stood on? Your father reached out again. His voicemails carried regret, apologies heavy with years of silence. Karen, I should have spoken up sooner. I'm proud of you. You listened, your chest tightening, but chose not to call back. Forgiveness, you realized, was not something to be rushed. Healing sometimes required distance. And after years of being unseen, you guarded your peace like the most precious investment of all. Months turned into seasons. The once perfect family table no longer existed. Your mother's stubbornness kept her isolated. Gregory's struggles left him bitter, clinging to the illusion that his downfall was somehow your fault. Your father built a quieter life, marked by solitude but softened by honesty. And you grew, expanded, thrived. It wasn't triumph in the loud, showy sense. It was triumph in silence. Walking through properties you owned, seeing families flourish under roofs you provided, watching students' dreams take shape through scholarships you funded. Every brick, every deed, every scholarship was a quiet declaration. I was never invisible. I was always here. Have you ever felt that kind of victory, not one shouted from rooftops, but one you carry deep in your chest, steady and unshakable? The truth of favoritism is that it leaves scars, not just on the child overlooked, but on the family itself. Gregory never learned resilience because he never had to. Your mother never learned balance because she never wanted to. Your father never found his voice until it was too late. And yet, you, the one who was dismissed, became the one who found strength. Looking back, you might wonder, what if your mother had looked up from her magazine to notice your birdhouse? What if she had cheered at your debate competition instead of his benchwarming game? Would your story have been different? Or was it the absence of her recognition that carved the resilience you needed to build your empire? Life rarely offers answers, only choices. That night at the dinner table, you chose to reveal what you had built, not for applause, but for freedom. And in the months that followed, you chose distance over endless battles, purpose over pettiness, creation over comparison. Standing on the balcony of your apartment one evening, the Sioux Falls skyline spread out before you, you thought about how far you had come. The city lights shimmered, a reminder that you had crafted a life illuminated not by anyone's approval, but by your own persistence. For the first time in years, you felt whole. Not because they had finally seen you, but because you no longer needed them to. In the quiet of your own space, you came to understand something profound. Recognition is fleeting, but self-worth endures. The mansion that once towered as a symbol of pride has crumbled, while your quiet empire continues to stand strong, built on perseverance, not favoritism. Your story is not one of revenge, but of reclaiming a voice that had long been silenced. By walking away from the need for approval, you found freedom, and with that freedom came peace. Perhaps that is the lesson hidden in every wound. Sometimes being overlooked plants the seed of resilience. And when it blossoms, it grows into something no dismissal can erase. If you were sitting at that table, would you have stayed silent, or would you have spoken your truth? Thank you for staying with this journey until the very end. If stories like this speak to your heart, a gentle like or subscribe is more than enough to let us keep sharing these moments together. After all, sometimes the simplest gestures remind us that we are seen, that our voices matter, and